If you want to avoid buying items that don't sell for you or that sit for a long time in your store, then you need to know how and learn to get better at the skill of checking comps on items before you buy. And that's what today's video is going to be all about. I'm going to be showing you exactly how I check comps and sell-through rate using the eBay and Poshmark app. That way you can know about how much an item could sell for and how long it's going to take to sell for you before you invest your hard-earned money on an item. Let's start by defining those two terms first: comps and sell-through rate. Comps is short for comparables, and comping is comparing an item you are thinking about buying to resell with items that are very similar to it or exactly like it on the reselling platforms that have sold previously. This is going to give you an estimate of the value of the item because you're seeing what buyers were willing to pay for that item for other sellers in the past. With that estimated value that you see online, then you're able to see if the item is going to be profitable for you or not based on how much the store is charging you for it. Sell-through rate, on the other hand, is the percent of items sold versus the number of items listed in a given time period. So basically, sell-through rate is going to tell you how fast items are selling by telling you the demand of that item at that time on the platform that you're checking. And the reason we want to know the sell-through rate of an item is to know if it is going to sit for us or if it's going to sell fairly quickly. And the idea here is just to try to purchase more items that have a higher sell-through rate so that you can keep your items flipping and you can keep the cash flowing in your business so that you can take that money to invest in even more inventory. And that's how you grow your business over time, which is the ultimate goal. One more thing before we jump into the actual demo. A lot of the times when we resellers, myself included, talk about comping, we are basically referencing to both of those things: the speed of sale and the sale price that you could possibly get for an item. Even though those two things are completely different metrics, oftentimes they get lumped together. So when I talk about comping in this video or in other videos, I'm often referring to both things: how fast is the item going to sell and how much I can get for it. Now let's move on to how to actually check sell-through rate and comps. There are three different ways that you can do it. Well, I'm sure there's many more, but there are three that we're going to talk about in today's video. The first one is using eBay search on the app. The second one is using eBay's product research tool. That one you can also find on the eBay app. And then the third one, the one that I leave as my last resort, which you'll see why later on in the video, is using Poshmark search. Let's go ahead and get started with the most common way people search up comps and the way that I was taught when I was first starting reselling, using eBay search. First step to start checking comps is you need the name or the style name of the product or clothing item, shoes, whatever you're searching, you need that style name. With clothing, that's very easy. A lot of the times the style name will be on the waistband of jeans or on the clothing tag. Sometimes those clothing tags have several different tags stacked on top of one another, so you just gotta look through those until you find something that says style number or style name. If you're lucky enough, then your item will have an exact style name and then you can just take it from there. If it's a style number you're working with, you're going to take that and put it into Google along with the brand name to see if Google will give you the style name. It's a lot easier to search that way on eBay with the exact name instead of a number, so do that if you can. If on the other hand your item does not have a name or a number to look up, then what you can do is use Google Lens to search up your item. With Google Lens, all you have to do is download the app, make sure you have it on your phone ready to go before you go sourcing. Click on the app and then just just take a picture of the item. From there, Google is going to search the internet for anything that looks like your item. You should be able to see some posts pop up on different websites. Sometimes even other resellers' posts will come up there for you from eBay, Poshmark, Mercari, or other reselling platforms. And oftentimes they will have already looked up the style name and they'll have it in their title, and that's how you can find it. The example I'm going to be using today is going to be these sandals right here, these croc beaded sandals. I used the Google Lens app to find the style name, and I was able to determine that they were called the Sloan sandals. So that's what I'm going to be using to search up my comps. But before we get to that step, one more thing I want to talk about here is if you can't find the style name of your item on the tags or using Google search, then your next best bet is going to be to just use general search terms. Sometimes I have to do that with jeans that are too simple and they don't have a style name anywhere. I'll just use the brand name and a simple search term and use that to look up comps. Towards shoes is another example that I often have to do this for. They don't usually put exact style names on their shoes. They just use a general title on their website. So when I'm searching up some heels, for example, by this brand, I'll just go on to eBay and put in Torrid point-to-toe heels. Sometimes I'll add in the size, sometimes I'll add in the color. It just depends on the type of results I'm getting, but we'll get more into that later, how to narrow down your search results so that you get a good pool of items to go by when you're checking comps. To do this with this first method, what you're going to do is go to the eBay app. There at the bottom, there is a magnifying glass icon. There you're going to click to search your item. I was doing some prepping before this video, so mine is already there under recent Croc Sloan sandals, but obviously for you, you're going to go ahead and type in the search term you came up with, either from the tag on your item or using Google search. From here, before we move on, the next thing you want to do is make sure that the search results that eBay gave you are the ones that you're looking for. You want to scroll through here a little bit and just make sure that the results you see are the item you are comping or items that look very similar to it. They don't all have to match exactly because eBay pulls in search results here from all sorts of places for all sorts of reasons. Maybe sometimes you were searching something up, so it'll throw a result in here that matches that. Also, people pay for ads, so sometimes you will see some of that here as well. But as long as most of them match, you're in a good place. However, if you see that a lot of these search results aren't matching the item you're trying to do comps for, there are two things that could be the reason why. One of the things is that you need to try to search a different way. Oftentimes we will use a word for a certain item or certain features on an item, but other sellers or buyers will use a completely different term. With boots, for example, if they're on the shorter end, you can use ankle boots. You can also use booties. So go ahead and try out those different terms to see which ones give you the best results. With these sandals that we're using as an example as well, I could maybe use slides. I could use just the word sandals, or I could even look up Croc Sloan flip-flops as well. The second thing that may be preventing you from seeing good results when you search up your item is that the title is way too long or way too wordy. This is a mistake I made a lot in the beginning. You would think that the more detailed and the more words you have in the search box, the better and the more accurate results you're going to get. But sometimes this is actually the opposite. I have found that it's a lot better to use a short and to the point search term title to check comps and then use filters to narrow down. That will oftentimes get you better results. So let's go ahead and do that with these sandals we're looking up. Towards the top on the left hand side, you will see something that says filter. Go ahead and tap on that. One of the filters you always want to make sure that you check no matter what is your condition filter, because that is going to affect how much you can get for an item and even how fast it will sell for you too. So go ahead and check that. These here are used, so I'm going to go ahead and tap on that. Next, I'm going to go back and I'm going to scroll down to the color. I'm going to select the black color here. I'm going to go back, scroll towards the bottom where it says show more, that little blue hyperlink. I'm going to tap on that so that I can get to accents. Since these beaded details here are a very prevalent thing on these sandals, I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I'll also go ahead and select studded, rhinestone, and glitter, because all of those accents are very similar to what these sandals have. I feel like the comps that I'm going to get with those filters selected is something I can go by because they're similar. So now I'm just going to tap on show results there at the bottom and just scroll through here, and again make sure that these results are like my item or very similar. I am good with those results, so that's what I'm going to go by. But basically that's what it comes down to when you're checking comps. Sometimes it's going to take a little bit of trial and error. Sometimes you're going to have to expand your search term a little bit. Sometimes you're going to have to remove some of those words and then use filters instead. Add some filters, delete some filters, and just do whatever you have to do to make sure you have a good pool of search results that you can go by. And you'll know they are a good pool of results when it's enough results, and also when they look like yours or very similar to yours. If you're getting thousands and thousands of items, that's an instance where I would try to narrow down by using those search filters and rewording my search phrase. Once you are happy with the results you've got there though, then you can move on to step 3, and that is to check out your numbers. There are 4 different numbers you want to look at. The first number is the amount of active listings on eBay right now, and you'll be able to see that when you tap on that filter option at the top left hand side. When you click on that, at the bottom there is a blue box. There are 28 of these sandals listed on eBay that have these accents and that are in this color. The second number you're going to look at is the amount of items that have sold on eBay that look like yours or are very similar to yours. To see that number, you're going to scroll towards the bottom, and there you should be able to see that sold items little toggle. If not, you can click on something that says show more to see this option. But since I clicked it earlier, I'm able to see it now. So I'm going to toggle it on. And now it tells me that 40 of these sandals have sold in the past 90 days. All of this data that eBay gives you on sold items is based on a 90-day period. The next number you're going to look at here is your average sold price. So go ahead and click that blue box there, and then you're going to scroll through your search results that you got here for sold items on eBay. You're going to look at how much other sellers were able to get for this item that you're looking up comps for. And basically what you want to do is just scroll for a bit and come up with a general average. Just mentally do the math about how much will you be able to get for this item. If your cost of goods at the store is too high for you to make a profit, then obviously it's just an automatic skip. But if the cost of goods is low enough and you are able to make a profit, then you can move on to checking the next number, which is sell-through rate. Because you don't only want to pick up items that are profitable, you want to pick up items that are profitable and that sell fast for you. So let's go ahead and look into this 4th number, how to check sell-through rate. There are 2 different ways you can do it. The first one is a surface level check, and then the second one is going to be a more detailed option. Let's go ahead and start with the surface level one. With this one, it's very simple. You're just going to compare the amount of items listed versus the number sold, and just at a glance see which one's higher. If the amount of items listed is a lot higher than the amount of items that sold on eBay for that exact item, that means that it's probably a bad buy. There's not a lot of demand for that item. Many sellers are listing it, but many buyers aren't searching for it or buying it. Now, if the opposite is true, the amount of items sold is way higher than the amount of items listed, that means it is probably a good buy for you, because that means that the demand is bigger than the supply, and that's the kind of items you want to pick up. So for these sandals, that is the case. There was 28 of them available, but 41 of them sold. So since there there are more sold than available. That's why I went ahead and picked these up. Even though we're moving into fall, they have a high chance of selling. Now let's talk about the next way of checking your comps, which is the more precise sell-through rate calculation. With this one, you're not just going to be looking at your numbers at a glance. You're actually going to take a formula, plug in some numbers, and come up with an exact percentage. The formula you're going to use for this, which is what most resellers use, is the number of items that have sold divided by the number of items listed. You're going to take that and times it by 100. There are more detailed formulas for sell-through rate, but this one is the simple one and it is a shortcut. It's the one most people use. So using that simple sell-through rate formula, let's go over an example. Let's say that you see that there are 120 items available for sale on the eBay website, and there are 70 of that same item that have sold. You're going to do 70 divided by 120 times 100, and that's going to give you a 58% sell-through rate in a 90-day period. Because remember, the results that eBay gives you for solds is based on a 90-day time frame. So that's the percent that many resellers will use to guide their sourcing decisions. But when it comes to what sell-through rate percent is good, it's going to depend a lot from person to person. Some resellers want to see a 100% sell-through rate, meaning that the amount of active listings matches or nearly matches the amount of sold listings. Other people are okay with a 50% sell-through rate. So the amount of sold listings is about half of the amount of active listings that they see for the item they're comping. Other people are okay with a 30% sell-through rate. So again, it is going to be total personal preference. It's going to depend on your business goals and how you want to go about it. But a little bit later on in the video, we are going to circle back to this topic. And I'm going to share with you the sell-through rate percent guide that I go by and that I'm using and testing out right now. For now, let's move on to method 2 of searching comps, and that is using eBay's product research tool. This is how I've currently been checking my comps when I'm at the store. I just find it a lot more simple to do, a lot more straightforward. All of the numbers are there for you, and this explanation should go by a little bit faster because all of the steps are pretty similar. For this one, we're going to be using these boots as an example. These are some Dansko boots. And again, step number 1 is going to be for you to find the exact style name of the item you're going to be comping. So for these, I'm going to use the Google Lens app. Once I used that to search these up, I saw that the name of these was called the Frankie boots. So that is the search term I'm going to use. For this method, you're also going to go to the eBay app. But in this case, instead of going to search, we're going to go to the selling tab at the bottom right hand side. From here, you're going to scroll to the bottom, and towards about the middle of the page, you will see something that says research. It's like a little rectangle with the magnifying icon. We're going to go ahead and tap on that and input our search term. When you do that, it's going to give you several different options for a category. I'm going to go ahead and go with boots for now. From here, you want to do the same thing that you did previously using eBay search. You want to scroll through these results just to make sure that you are seeing the item you're comping. You don't want to end up with data that you didn't mean to. These are some specific boots with a specific style name. So the results I'm getting, I'm good with, but I do just want to show you the effect your search terms will have on the results you get when it comes to comps and sell-through rate. Right now, I am seeing a 45% sell-through rate for these boots. If I go up here to the search bar and add the word black for the color, then I see the sell-through rate went up slightly. Sometimes I will change around the way I'm searching an item depending on what I see in that sell-through rate box right there. The sell-through rate is way too low. Then I try to add a little bit of specific search terms to see if I can get that sell-through rate to go up a little bit. Sometimes an item can have a low sell-through rate overall, but it's certain accents, features, colors, or different things that will make that sell-through sell-through rate jump up a little bit. Sometimes size has a big thing to do with it. Smaller items will sell at a lot slower pace, so you'll see a lower sell-through rate. But when you add a larger size there, you'll see that sell-through rate go up by a lot, and then you're able to pick up the item. And that just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You just have to play around with that search term until you see good results. Sometimes you'll never get good results. In that case, you're going to have to leave that item behind. But let's keep going with our search comp here. The next thing we have to do, like earlier, is add some filters. The first filter I'm going to add is the category filter. We're going to go ahead and select boots, and then we can see that the sell-through rate stayed at 46%. Sometimes an item can technically belong to several different categories. When that is the case, I like to check the sell-through rate and the numbers for that item in the different categories. These are some Dansko boots, which sometimes can also be known as comfort shoes. So I'm going to go ahead and select that down arrow and see what the sell-through rate looks like when I select comfort shoes instead. In this case, I see that the sell-through rate went up to 50%. I'm going to scroll through here and it won't let me because there are only 2 items that have sold by sellers who listed it using that category comfort. If I switch it back to the boots category and scroll through here, I can see that many more have sold with this category. So in this instance, I'm going to stick with the boots category for this item. But sometimes it turns out that a different category than I initially thought would actually do a lot better for the item. So just play around with that. That way you know what category you should be listing your item in, and also what category is going to give you the sell-through rate percent that you need in order to get your item to sell quickly. The next filter we're going to add here is the condition filter, and for this one I like to select all 3 of them: the fair, the pre-owned, and the excellent. Unless the item is new, I will leave those unchecked. Next and last filter I am going to add is the format filter, and for these I select the bottom 2: fixed price and best offer accepted. I don't sell items based on auction, so I leave that one unchecked. And now we can go back and see our final results. One thing I do want to tell you though, because I didn't realize this when I was barely using this product research tool, you have to select a category before that condition filter shows up. So if you're looking for the condition filter and you don't see it anywhere, it's because you haven't selected a category yet. So now that we have our search term and all of our categories selected and everything is looking good, from here we can move on to step 3, which was to just check out the numbers. With product research, there is no calculating, there is no mentally averaging things out. Everything is laid out for you here, which is why I like using this tool to check comps for the most part. And everything you see here is pretty much self-explanatory, but I am going to go over the numbers and how I use them to make my decisions. But first, I do want to give a very important disclaimer here, and that is that the sell-through rate percent you see here on the product research tool is not the same as the sell-through rate percent that you see using the eBay search that we used earlier. That eBay search method using that simple formula is going to give you a very different result than if you were to come here and search it up using product research. And that is because this tool uses a different formula to calculate sell-through rate. They don't use that simple formula I used earlier. They use a much more detailed formula. I talked about this and explained it in more detail in my most recent video, the Thrift With Me video I posted. So instead of repeating all of that information here again, I'm just going to roll the clip so that you can understand what I'm talking about here. With the research tool, eBay pulls in a lot more data. They take into consideration solds, active listings, and even unsold items, versus the common method that most of us use where we just compare active versus solds to come up with the sell-through rate percent. So the sell-through rate percent you see on the app is going to look a lot different sometimes than what you're used to if you always do just active versus sold and that's it. So don't be shocked if the numbers you see on the eBay site don't match up with what you see using the research tool on the eBay app. Now, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's go ahead and go back to product research tool and all of these numbers. First thing I like to look at is the sell-through rate percent. Obviously, the higher this number is, the better. But I am still testing out to see what is the lowest I can go with the sell-through rate percent. So I don't have a set number yet, but I do have a guide that I'm currently going by. And again, I shared that sell-through rate percent guide that I used to source in my most recent Thrift With Me video. So I'll roll the clip here in case you want to know what percentages I go by. I've been shifting from sourcing mostly based on style to focusing more on high sell-through rate. I'm still learning and getting better with this new approach. But for me right now, my guide is about a 25% sell-through rate is good enough to pick up. 30 to 40% sell-through rate on the app is a solid pickup. 50% is awesome. And 60% plus sell-through rate on the app is a definite yes. If the selling price also makes sense, I do pick those up. That's my logic right now. It may change as I get better with comping, but that seems to be working out okay for me. So those are the percentages that I go by to make my sourcing decisions. Again, what is good for you is going to depend on a lot of things. We are going to talk about it a little bit more at the end of the video. But for now, if you see that sell-through rate percent is good enough for you, then you can move on to the next number that you're going to check, and that is the average selling price. If the item at the store is priced low enough for you to make a profit based on that average selling price you're seeing on product research, then obviously it is a good idea for you to buy it. If everything else checks out, like the condition, the season, and other things like that, if you're not going to be able to make a profit once you compare it to the average selling price, then you're going to have to leave it behind. When I do take an item home, what I've been doing lately is taking a screenshot of the product research results I got. That way, when I get home and I'm ready to list the item, I will know exactly what category to list it in, which is going to be either the one with the higher sell-through rate percent or the one that has the most sold items underneath it. I will also be able to know exactly how much to price my item at, which typically is going to be that average selling price plus 20%, just to make room for offers. And by the way, if you want to know how to look up comps using these methods, but use them more for pricing instead of sourcing, you can check out the video that I'll leave linked here on the screen. There I show you how to use product research for pricing, not just sourcing. A lot of the times I am able to find the item I am looking for using that product research tool, but there are times that I cannot find the item no matter how I search, no matter what filters I use. This happens sometimes if the item is rare or if it's vintage. Other times it could happen because the item is very new to the market. Maybe the brand just put it out and there's not that many available on the reselling marketplaces, and so there's not that much data to go by. When this happens, then instead of using the product research tool, I will use either eBay search or Poshmark search instead. I already showed you how to use eBay search, so now let's move on to method number 3 of searching up comps, and that is using Poshmark search. This item here is not vintage or rare or new, but this is the example I'm going to be using to show you how to use Poshmark search to find comps for items. The same steps are going to apply. The first thing you have to do is come up with your search term, either from the item or using Google. This one does have the exact style name in the tag. Here I can see that they are called the Uptown. So that's what I'm going to search up on Poshmark. Vionic Uptown loafers. If you scroll through here, you will see that there are many that look just like mine, which if you didn't get a good view of them, here's what they look like. But in here, there are also many that aren't like mine that are a little bit different. So let's go ahead and select some filters to narrow things down. At the top, there are some keywords that Poshmark puts there. So the first one I'm going to select is penny, because these are penny loafers. I'm also going to select suede because that's the material of these shoes. And then the next thing I like to select is the size filter. Right here, it is under my size. I don't know why Poshmark does this. Sometimes that can skew results. I like to put all sizes instead. So that's the one I'll select and then tap done right there. And now we have better results here. The next filter I'm going to select though to get even better results is the color. These are black, so that's what I'll select. Now that we have everything narrowed down a bit, we can go on to look at our numbers, which are going to be pretty much the same as with the product research tool and with eBay search. We're going to look at active listings, and this is where things can get a little bit tricky with Poshmark, because unlike eBay, they don't give us exact numbers. There's nowhere where you can see the exact number of active listings for this item. You're just going to have to scroll through these active listings and make a mental note of about how many are listed. So I'd say scroll just for a little bit just to kind of see. Sometimes you'll just see a few listed at the top, and then you scroll a little bit and there's no more. So then you're able to see there's not that many listed. But if you scroll for quite a bit and there's still more and more, then you know there are a ton listed. Like before, the next number we're going to check out is the amount of sold items. So for that, scroll all the way over on the filters little section at the top, go to availability and switch that to sold instead. And again, like with actives, you're just going to scroll a little bit here and see about how many of these have sold. After doing that for a bit, I can see there's probably an even amount. The amount listed and the amount sold pretty much match. So what you're doing here is just trying to come up with a sell-through rate at a glance. The next number we're going to look at is the average selling price, and again you're going to come up with a rough estimate of the average selling price. That's what you have to do here on Poshmark, well, with all the other methods too, but more so here on Poshmark, everything is just rough estimates. But after checking out all of these sold listings for these shoes, I can see that the average selling price is about $30 to $40. If the average selling price checks out with you, depending on how much you're paying for the item and if there is going to be enough room for profit, then you can move on to checking the next number, which is the sell-through rate. You kind of already did that by mentally comparing active versus solds, but there is one more thing you can do to try to get a little bit more information about the sell-through rate here on Poshmark, and that is to check out the first handful of the listings at the top. Click into each one of them, and at the very top you will see an updated date. Updated on Poshmark means the last time that the seller did anything with that listing. But the thing is that most sellers don't do anything else with a listing after it has sold. So it is safe to assume that that updated date is when that item sold. So once I click into about the first 3 rows of the sold items and I see that that updated date is very recent, then I know that the item is selling pretty fast on Poshmark. If I see that that date is very old, then I know that it's a slow seller. However, do keep in mind that technically, sellers can share a sold listing. That's weird, but it's true. They can share a listing if they want. And if they do that, then that updated date is going to change. And then it's going to be useless for us because it's not technically when it's sold. It's when that seller last shared it. But I think most sellers don't do that. Once it sells, they never touch it again. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing your research on Poshmark is that unlike eBay, who only goes back 90 days with their sold listings, on Poshmark, who knows how far back they can go. If I go down here and I click into one, it says August 27th. that August 27th could be this year or it could have been last year. There's really no way of telling for sure. So basically, you're just trying to use your context clues when it comes to Poshmark. And even with all of those flaws, I still do find it helpful sometimes because, for example, with these loafers, I clicked into the first one and it says 7 hours ago. Then I click into the next one and it says September 6th. Then we see this one that says September 4th, September 3rd, and then we see August 30th. So one sold a few hours ago and the rest seem to be going in order. Today is September 16th, so they all sold within this month. So that tells me that this item does sell pretty quickly. But there are times that I will see a date on the first few listings at the top that's more in the future. So if today is September 16th, the items there will say that they sold, let's say, in September 25th. An item can't sell in the future. So in that case, that tells me that that item last sold last year. So that item is a slow seller. So then I'm more likely to leave it behind because I don't want my items to take that long to sell. So that is exactly how I check my comps before buying items. It is a very lengthy explanation, but in practice, it is a little bit faster. Still time consuming though, especially compared to just picking up items based on style and throwing them in the cart. That is a lot faster. When you're checking comps, it is going to take you a bit longer to go through stores, but you're going to walk out with items that have the potential of selling a lot faster for you. And like I said, it's going to help you keep the cash flowing in your business so that you can continue to have money to reinvest. But that speed part, that is something that I'm still working on. I'm trying out different things, different apps to get faster at it too. And another thing I'm trying to dial in a little bit more is what sell-through rate percent is good for me, my business, and my goals. I did share earlier my sell-through rate percent guide that I'm going by right now, and that seems to be working out pretty well. But I am starting to test things out. When I'm listing my items, I'm also adding in my SKU field what sell-through rate percent that item showed up as when I was comping it. That way, when the item sells, I'm able to compare how long it took to sell to the sell-through rate percent that the product research app showed me when I sourced the item. Once I do that for long enough, I think I'll have enough good data to go by to determine a lot better what is a good sell-through rate percent for me and my store and the kind of items that I'm buying. The sell-through rate percent that is good for you is going to depend on a lot of different things, like the amount of storage space you have, the amount of money you have to invest in these items, how quickly you want to make back that money, your profit goals, the season we're in, and so many other things. I did plan to have a whole section here at the end of this video discussing all of the different things that affect the sell-through rate that is good for each person, but then I figured this video is going to be way too long, so instead I'm going to leave that topic for next week's video. I'll be going into all of that in a lot more detail, so if you want to try to figure out what's a good sell-through rate percent for you, that is going to be a good video to watch. Make sure you're subscribed and that you hit that bell icon so that you're notified when that video goes live. And if that video is already live by the time you're watching this video, then you'll see it linked on the screen and also in the description down below. With all of that said, I really do hope you found this video helpful and that it helps you make a lot better sourcing decisions moving forward. I thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you in the next one.